Well, good evening. I finally made it back to story time. Sorry I wasn't here last week. We've had a lot going on right now. And I didn't feel up to sitting in front of the camera, and to be honest with you, I wasn't 100% happy with the story because I'd had a lot to do, so thank you very much, Mr. Modman. So I wasn't happy with it, so I wasn't going to go ahead with it. I was completely 100% happy. So let's get the legalities out of the way first and foremost. Good evening, boys and girls. Before we begin tonight's tale, I must remind everyone, whether you're here live, watching the VOD later, or watching on YouTube, that this is strictly for mature audiences only and not suitable for viewers under the age of 18 or anyone with a nervous disposition. If you are new to the channel, and first off, welcome. If you like what you see, please hit the follow button, and then that way you'll see whenever I go live, it's not just stories, I also play some horror games, nice wee mix for any previous stories. And there's Conch coming in. Welcome. Brilliant movie choice tonight. Thoroughly enjoyed it. I love the commitment. Absolutely brilliant movie. Does not get enough recognition. And there's Kiddle, the Doctor Who theme. So, yep, as I was saying, for previous episodes, jump over to YouTube and all stories are there, uploaded every Tuesday, if I remember. If you are watching this at a later date on YouTube, please don't forget, hit the subscribe button, ring the notification bell, then that way you always know when to upload, in case I have forgotten, because I'm bad for it. Evening Purple. Also, please feel free to share any of the videos that are up on YouTube, but please, if you are sharing them, please share with the caption of strictly for mature audiences only. I don't want sued because someone's 5-year-old has walked in while mummy's watching about the random Scottish woman talking about Jack the Ripper, okay, or Albert Fish. I don't want sued. So please, if you are going to share them, please remember to state that it is strictly for mature audiences only. I can't afford the lawsuit on top of everything else I've got going on right now. Which, FYI, is a story for another time, but I can't go into any further information. But that will all be explained at a later date, eventually.
Hi, how are you?
I'm very well, Keir. Thank you very much. How are you? Right, so I think I'm sending somewhere similar for you to your channel, to be honest with you. I keep forgetting to spend them. Oh. I think I'm sitting with, I noticed during Conch's stream, but I think I'm sitting with about 11,000 for Conch. I've got about 18,000 for Beard Day. I really do need to add more. And for Ginge, I think I've got like 145,000 channel points. So really need to start spending them. But yeah, I do need to add more redemptions. I really do. I need to add some more sound alerts, some more funny ones, some bits and pieces. But now that I've got the new PC, now that we've got Phoenix, and we know what she's capable of, which is actually quite a lot, then I'm sure we can get something figured out. Yeah, I definitely do need to add more, but we are, we've not had the FAD. As you can see, office is bare. We are in the process of moving right now, so there is going to come a time in the near future where we might need to take a couple of days off or a week off or something, but obviously we'll keep everybody up to date and like on socials and whatnot, and we'll still have the laptops and the phones. It's just everything else will need to get packed up and shipped, and it's not it's not fun. But we will get there. It just means that we might need to go dark for a couple of days till we can get everything sent to the new place and set up and everything in the new offices. Which will be good because it'll mean Mr. Modman will have his own office for once. Yeah, I thought, to be honest with you, when we moved in here, we did say that this was the final move, and we've been happy here. But circumstances have changed, and we've decided that we'll be happier somewhere else. It's as simple as that. So,
Hi, how are you?
hey Beardy, I'm very good, thank you very much. How are you? But yeah, so we are actually going to be away from the area by by the time the December meetup happens. But me and Junior are going to come back up and just get a hotel for the night because I've already bought the tickets. So obviously I'm not saying on air where we're going, but everybody that knows us knows where we're headed. So obviously there is another meetup in that area. So we should be able to attend that as well. Which is kind of cool. So yeah, we bit all over the place just now, but we're getting there. Well, thank you. I actually think Ginger's interested in coming to that other one as well, because we've just obviously, you're aware of the situation. We've just brought everything forward 6 months, and I just thought, why the hell not? It just, there was absolutely no reason not to, so we thought, well, sod it, let's just do it. You know? So I'll go here at the Ginger Army headquarters once she's moving location by a few 100 miles, but never mind. Right, so anyway, on to tonight's story. Now, I touched on this, I mentioned it when we were talking about Dr. Glacier and Dr. Glacier Jr. And it piqued my interest, but it wasn't a story I was familiar with, but it piqued my interest, so I did a wee bit of digging, and it's another one of them where I kind of wish I hadn't realised what I was letting myself in. I didn't know what I was letting myself in for. I really didn't. And I thought it was just going to be a simple, straightforward, but it never works out like that for me, really, does it? I mean, these stories are never simple, straightforward. How's it going? And that's my phone now telling me that I am live, even though I have been live for 16 minutes. Oh, honestly. Right, so, yep, that's my phone telling me I'm live. Cheers. I didn't know that, the camera in front of me and the microphone and everything else, but thanks for letting me know. Sounds really nice of you. So, here on Storytime with Buck Buck, we found out quite a lot of interesting things, and like I said, this one caught my attention while working on the Dr. Glacier piece. And I remember describing it at the time when I was doing the Dr. Glacier and Dr. Glacier story as a complete and utter clusterfuck that I needed to look into. And I kind of wish I'd forgotten about it, I really do, but I wrote it in the book and I do have a schedule, so it was on it, so I had to do it. Now, for a lot of reasons, this story, even though I kind of part of me wishes I didn't look into it, I'm kind of glad I did, because it still needs to be told, right? Because this is back to the whole learning from more mistakes. I took that off. Please ignore that stream elements. I took that off. I swear to God, I sat and I went through all. I went through Moobot, I went through Stream Elements, and I took that off. That raid campaign is no longer available. Okay, so please ignore that. If you do play raid, you can attempt to use my promo code, but I don't think it would work anymore. I have taken that off. I don't know why that is still there. So, in 1925, William Gordon was released from Peterhead Prison in Scotland. Unbeknownst to the authorities, Gordon smuggled out a message from fellow prisoner Oscar Joseph Slater. The message, written on waterproof paper and hidden under Gordon's tongue, look, the way in hospitals they tongue their medication to make the nurses and that think that they've swallowed it. That's what he'd done with this message. And it was a plea for help, and it had to be delivered to no one other than Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Yeah, I did not see this coming at all. Now, Conan Doyle first heard the name Oscar Slater years earlier when he became aware of the case when Slater was actually sentenced to death for the murder of Marion Gilchrist. The crime occurred the one and only the crime occurred December 21st, 1908, Glasgow. Helen Lambie, the sole servant, don't like that word, but let's just go with housemaid, housekeeper, whatever, of the elderly Miss Marion Gilchrist. Now, Miss Marion Gilchrist is described as an 83-year-old spinster. For anyone unaware, spinster is an older unmarried woman. Just thought I'd put that wee bit of information in there. Now, Helen Lambie left her employer for a few minutes to go and get the daily newspaper. Shortly thereafter, Arthur Adams, who lived in the apartment directly below Miss Gilchrist, said he and his sister heard 3 knocks on the ceiling. Thinking that Miss Gilchrist wanted assistance, Adams went to investigate, as you would. Wee old lady downstairs, chaps in the ceiling, you go down, you make sure everything's okay. So, Adams went to make sure everything was alright. Now, when he arrived at Miss Gilchrist's door, he rang the bell. Although no one came to the door, he heard noises inside the apartment, so he knew that there was somebody in there. He returned downstairs, but his sisters urged him to go back and check on Miss Gilchrist one more time. He returned upstairs and was in the front door when Helen Lambie, the housekeeper, I'm not using the word servant, the housekeeper returned from her errand. She popped to the local shop to pick up a newspaper. At about this time, they glimpsed a man in the building's hallway. However, it didn't strike either of them as unusual. Perhaps it was another tenant or a visitor. It's an apartment block, lots of comings and goings. Didn't strike them as suspicious at all. At any rate, Adams told Helen what had been going on in the few minutes that she had been away, and together they entered the apartment. To their horror, they discovered that Miss Gilchrist had been bludgeoned to death. Her personal papers had been rifled through, and a diamond brooch was stolen. Right. Now, Miss Gilchrist was quite an affluent woman. Now, the brooch in question was a diamond brooch, and it was worth quite a lot of money. And the personal papers had been rifled through. So, your first instinct is to go to burglary as motive. The interesting thing, though, to note that in the wardrobe of Miss Gilchrist's bedroom, there was a jewellery box which contained around £3,000 worth of jewellery. Now, that's then the jewellery was valued at around £3,000. Today, it would be just over £200,000. So, lot of jewellery. So obviously Adams when he heard the banging, he went to investigate. He disturbed whoever was in the apartment, because the jewellery in the wardrobe was still there. The only thing that was taken was the diamond brooch that Miss Gilchrist had in fact been wearing. Now, there was public outcry against this brutal murder, and quite rightly so. The police and the public wanted the crime to be solved quickly and the murderer put behind bars. Again, as you would expect, this little old 83-year-old woman minding her own business gets brutally butchered in her own home, and obviously someone was watching. She was clearly targeted because they knew that she was home alone, and they knew that they only had a couple of minutes to go in and to rob this old lady, because our housekeeper wouldn't be too far away. She'd only popped to the local shop. She was only gone a matter of minutes. So someone clearly targeted this little old lady. Yet within 5 days, the police announced that they were looking for a suspect. And his name was Oscar Slater. Now, at first glance, it did seem that the police had indeed found their man. Slater lived near Miss Gilchrist, and he was well known to the police for running an illegal gambling operation. He'd recently pawned a diamond brooch, and even more damning was the fact that soon after the murder, Slater left the country under a fake name and went to New York. So, really not looking good for you there, Mr. Slater. Now, I don't know why I don't have this added in, but bit of information about Mr. Oscar Slater. I can't remember. Oscar Slater was not his original name. Exactly. All signs point to him. So it's completely, when you're reading that, you think, yeah, it definitely does sound like they've got the right guy. Oscar Slater was the name he chose when he emigrated to Edinburgh originally from Poland. He was of Jewish descent and fled to the country to avoid being enlisted. And I apologise, he's not Polish, he was German descent. Jewish, German, the beginning of the 20th century. He hauled ass, came over to Britain. He actually came to Edinburgh. And he was well known for dabbling in some not rather pleasant activities, shall we say. He had been... Yeah, you can't blame the guy for wanting to haul ass out of Germany. But he had been arrested and tried twice for assault, admonished both times, or acquitted, wrong choice of words. He was acquitted of assault both times. He ran around with some questionable characters. He was a bookmaker, obviously ran this illegal gambling operation. He ran about he knew a lot of fences. For anybody unaware, a fence is someone who buys and sells stolen property. So he's an unsavoury character at best. And he used quite a lot of different aliases. And of course, I'm not going to attempt to pronounce his birth name because I would butcher it. Hydrate, thank you. I'm really, really bad for that. I always forget to hydrate. But originally, I think he might have changed his name to hide his Jewish heritage. And given the... Why is my coaster upside down? Given the climate at the beginning of the 20th century, you can't really blame him for wanting to hide his Jewish roots.
He fucked up.
Yeah. So he was rather an unsavoury character. And the police, they thought they had their man. He lived local to Miss Gilchrist. He pawned a diamond brooch. He was actually seen trying to sell the pawn ticket. And just days after the murder, he went under an assumed name to New York. So, all signs are definitely pointing towards this being the guy that done in this little old lady and stole her brooch. Now, Slater was discovered in America. And once he was made aware of the accusations against him, he He was made aware of the accusations, but at the time, the police were told they could apply to have him extradited, but their evidence was circumstantial, so chances are that extradition would fail. They, however, petitioned to begin the extradition process, regardless what they were told. They thought, no, that's our guy, we want him back. So they went ahead, started the proceedings. But when Oscar became aware of the accusations surrounding him, he's like, no having that. He returned. He came back. Because he was positive, he was convinced that he would be able to clear his name to prove that, and he didn't in fact kill this little old lady. That was his thought. So the extradition never went ahead. Even though the police did apply, he came back voluntarily. He's like, no, I've got nothing to hide, I've done nothing wrong. I'm coming back and I'm going to prove my innocence. So that kind of makes you think, well, And he was aware that they had applied for extradition and that it probably wasn't going to work. So he could have stayed there. Like, he would have been safe. They would never have shipped him back. America would never have deported him because they didn't believe that they had a strong enough, the Scotland police had a strong enough case to warrant extradition. But he came back willingly regardless. Because he thought, no, I never done it, I'm coming back, I'm going to prove it. So, fair play to him, I guess. Now, the brooch, the diamond brooch that Slater pawned, turned out it was not the one that belonged to Marion Gilchrist. It was a completely different brooch that did not resemble Marion Gilchrist's in the slightest. He also had witnesses to testify who would testify quite willingly that he was with them at the time this little old lady was murdered. Couldn't have done it. He was with us. So the brooch wasn't hers. He had an alibi, quite a strong one, but more than one person. So you're thinking, he's came back willingly, wasn't her brooch, he's got an alibi, quite a few actually. Maybe he didn't do it after all. But the police, they really didn't care much about Slater's evidence. They were sure that he was indeed the culprit. Because in addition to his criminal history was the fact that police had witnesses. After some coaching by the authority, these people, these witnesses, including Helen Lambie, the housekeeper, were sure that they had seen Slater leaving the scene of the murder. Also, police believed that they had found the murder weapon after a small hammer was found in Slater's possession. He owned a hammer, so he must have done it. Right. Small hammer was found in his possession, so he must have done it. I own a small hammer. Yes, this is a small hammer. £3 out of Tesco's. Does that mean I did it? I keep it in my office drawer, by the way, because I keep quite a lot of tools in my office drawer. It saves having a tool bag in here. I know, random stuff in my office drawer, but my point in question is, most people own a hammer. So that's kind of circumstantial. So it went to trial for some unknown reason. And the trial was held in 1909. Now, despite the conflicting evidence, Oscar Slater was unbelievably found guilty of the murder of Marion Gilchrist and sentenced to death. Everyone has got a hammer somewhere in the house. You know why? They're bloody handy. Obviously they're all done now, but as you know, I had posters all over. Even push pins I can't put in because I can't grab them properly. My hands they won't allow me. So I will hold it and I will hit it with my hammer. Hammers are handy. If I'm struggling to open a jar, I'll get a tap with a hammer. Because again, I struggle to open things. Hammers are handy when your hands don't work too good. So, hey minimum. How's you? So, despite the conflicting evidence, he was found guilty of the murder of Marion Gilchrist and he was sentenced to death. Now, Slater's lawyers started a petition that urged mercy. They didn't appeal, they urged for mercy. No, they really didn't. Yeah. 2 days before he was due to die. 2 days before death sentence was due to be carried out, Slater's sentence was changed from death to life imprisonment with hard labour. I mean, let's be real. The man probably should have been in jail many times over, but not for this. The evidence was clearly in his favour, but they did not care. Now, the following year, Scottish lawyer and amateur criminologist William Roehead, I believe I've pronounced that right, published his Trial of Oscar Slater, highlighting flaws in the prosecution. Well, no shit, there was flaws. The circumstantial evidence against Slater included his flight from justice. While the jury had been made aware of his entire past life, the identification evidence was fleeting and otherwise unreliable, prejudice, tainted or coached. In particular, Slater, bear in mind this is a big Jewish German, conspicuously contrasted with 9 off-duty policemen in his identification parade. So, Charlie, so when the housekeeper, Helen Lambie, I picked Oscar Slater out of an identification parade, it was Slater, a big Jewish German, and 9 off-duty policemen. How's you, Charlie? Yeah. Of course she's going to pick him. The rest of them are Polish, for goodness sake. Yeah, getting there. Oh, I should have got a creak in my neck. Oh. So, yeah, of course she's going to pick the non-policeman. Oh, a bit stupid, but hey-ho. Slater's lawyers also contacted Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Now, while Conan Doyle didn't approve of Slater or his lifestyle, because he wasn't a nice man, so can't really blame him, it was clear that he was, however not nice, he wasn't the murderer of Marion Gilchrist. In 1912, Conan Doyle published The Case of Oscar Slater. It examined evidence brought forward at the trial and point by point proved that Slater was not the killer of Miss Marion Gilchrist. We're now in 1912. He's still in jail here. Not a problem, Conch. Now, for example, Conan Doyle explained that Slater travelled under an assumed name. Remember when he went to New York under a false name? It was because he was travelling with his mistress and he didn't want his wife to find out. I mean, let's face it, this guy's a real charmer, right? But that's why he was using a fake name. He didn't want his wife finding out. It was nothing to do with trying to hide for the police. And while it was true that Slater, like myself and 95% of the population, Slater did possess a small hammer, it wasn't large enough to inflict the type of wounds that Miss Gilchrist had sustained. Conan Doyle stated that a medical examiner at the crime scene declared that a large chair dripping with blood seemed to be the murder weapon. The murder weapon was at the scene covered in blood and the medical examiner pointed this out and the police ignored it because Slater owned a fucking hammer. Sheesh, give me strength. I mean, that's got miscarriage of justice written all over it. And that's why I picked up on this, because like I said, from beginning to end, it was a clusterfuck. And when I picked up on it, I did not care. I didn't know about Conan Doyle's influence in the case. I didn't know he had anything to do with it. I had a name and a year. Yeah, right? Ain't everybody that owns a hammer sus. You missed that bit. Everybody that owns a hammer is sus. And yes, that is the actual size of it in my hand. It is absolutely tiny. Exactly. It couldn't possibly have been the big heavy chair covered in the woman's blood. No. The dinky little hammer that was owned by a random guy that happened to live nearby. I don't think police were maybe prejudiced against him, and maybe he would have been safer staying. Oh, basically the Conan Doyle discovered that the medical examiner at the crime scene found the murder weapon and pointed it out. It was a blood-soaked chair and couldn't possibly have been the hammer that Slater owned, because that was way too small to inflict the damages sustained by little old Marion Gilchrist. And I keep going to call her Margaret, but that's because Margaret was in the last story. And but yeah, so couldn't he possibly have been the blood-soaked chair that matched the wounds? No. I'm beginning to think that the Jewish German would maybe have been safer staying in Germany. Oh. Now, Conan Doyle also concluded that Miss Gilchrist had in fact opened the door to her murderer herself. He surmised that she knew the murderer. Now, despite the fact that Miss Gilchrist and Oscar Slater lived near one another, they hadn't actually met. And why would they? This is a little old lady, a little old spinster woman, and an organised criminal. Well, to be honest with you, I don't think it could have been much better than being fitted up the entire country for a murder you didn't commit. It's a weird one. So yeah, she opened the door. She knew her killer, but she never knew Oscar Slater. It's like I said, what the hell with the little old lady and the organised crime guy having common? Why would they be talking? You know. Now, the case of Oscar Slater caused some demand for a retrial, obviously. However, the authorities said that the evidence didn't justify the case be reopened because it proved they messed up. In 1914, there were more calls for a retrial. New evidence had come to light. Another witness was found that could verify Slater's whereabouts during the time that the little old lady was killed. Also, it was learned that before Heather Lambie named Slater as the man she'd seen in the hallway the day of the murder, she had given the police another name. So she told the police, right, this is who I've seen. And they replied, no, this is not who you've seen. You've seen this man instead. And you're now going to pick him out of a 10-man lineup where the other 9 men are policemen. Yeah. Unbelievably, the officials decided to let them at rest because they would realise they fucked up. Under pressure from Detective Trench, a prison doctor and a Glasgow lawyer named David Cook, then Scottish Secretary McKinnon Wood, launched a secret inquiry in 1914. So McKinnon Wood, the Scottish Secretary... Oh, Bucky! I love that sound alert. That. I fell! We still won the game. So everybody is saying, no, we're not reopening it, I don't care about the new evidence, don't care that we've messed up, we're not reopening it. So Scottish Secretary McKinnon Wood has got all these folk that look, you need to do something here. This was wrong. So he launched a secret inquiry in 1914 because he thought, no, here, hold on, something's going on. All this evidence and all these folk, I mean, I've got detectives and prison doctors and lawyers and authors at me. Maybe I should look into this. But of course, he had to keep it hush hush because nobody wanted the case reopened. No one wanted this to be retried because that would highlight the fact that they basically pinned it on an innocent man. knowing the name of the actual killer, but letting them go. Which kind of makes me think Helen Lambie gave the police a name, and she said, "This is who I saw in that hallway the day me and Adams discovered Marion Gilchrist dead." And the police turned around and said, "No, you didn't. This is who you saw." Which says to me that... So I'm going to move that way a wee bit. That says to me that whoever Helen Lambie saw that day in the apartment block, it's obviously well known. It's got friends in high places, or maybe works somewhere where you wouldn't expect a murderer to work. Now this is me just spitballing here, because we don't know. Okay, the murderer was... we don't know. But there is a reason that the police told Helen Lambie that that is not who you saw that day. Cancel! Really? There's a reason why the police told her that that's not who she saw that day. Because they didn't want whoever she saw getting into trouble for this. Even though chances are that is who killed her. Who did kill Marion Gilchrist. Again, that's just me spitballing. I don't know. Let's be fair, I've got a bit of a wild imagination at the best of times, but that's just what it's saying to me. I'm not an expert. I find the stories, I do a bit of digging, and I tell you what I think, and that's what I think. That's my personal opinion on the story. Now, the secret investigation in 1914. However, yep, that is exactly what I think, Purple. They were covering up and protecting the real killer. That is my personal opinion on the matter. Maybe, for all we know, it could have been a police officer. But for some reason, Helen Lambie was told, "Nope, you didn't see that person. Nope, you saw this person instead." Right. So, however, now this is a quote. "This was a farce and Gilbertian. I don't know. And I'm scared to Google, and I'm scared to check, because my search history is dodgy. But the secret investigation was described as a farce. And Detective Trench, the man that wanted this investigation to be opened, was sacked and then framed for reset by the Glasgow police. And as if that wasn't bad enough, poor Trench passed away in 1919 before ever seeing justice and before ever finding out the truth. So he started digging, and they made him shut up. They fired him and they framed him for something called reset. I don't know what that is, but they discredited him. They fired him and they discredited him because they were covering up not only their mistakes, but they knew who the killer was. They had the name of the killer. So for whatever reason, they were covering it up. Now, obviously, they were covering up the fact that they were covering it up in the first place, but they made him go away. They discredited him completely. So nobody was ever going to believe a word they said. Indeed, the case remains the worst miscarriage of justice in Scottish legal history, with several senior police officers, Stevenson or Ord, disgracing themselves, John Neil Hart, the fiscal, and several Liberal Lord advocates, and even the Judge Lord Guthrie, as well as politicians actively colluding to retain the conviction. So this went all the way to the top, trying to stop this from being retried, trying to cover up what really happened and who really killed little old Mary Gilchrist. So either it was someone influential or it was the son of someone influential. That is my personal opinion. But, yep. But whoever it was, they were well connected. Conan Doyle was outraged. How the verdict could be that there was no fresh cause for reversing the conviction is incomprehensible. The whole case will, in my opinion, remain immoral, and the classics of crime as the supreme example of official incompetence and obstinacy. And I did really well there not to stutter through that entire quote. But yeah. So Conan Doyle was not happy. He knew Slater was fitted up, and he knew this went all the way to the top. He knew that Trench was fitted up to cover it up because he was digging. But nobody cared. When they started digging, disappeared. They were discredited. Now, throughout the years, Conan Doyle raised the issue of the injustice against Oscar Slater. However, he was not successful in his efforts. Then, in 1925, he received the message smuggled out of Peterhead prison. Now, Oscar Slater didn't offer any new revelations. There was no new evidence. It was just a note from a desperate man who wanted justice, and he begged Conan Doyle not to forget him and to try to free him just one more time. Just try once more, please. I'm desperate. I have now been in here for 18 years for a crime that I didn't commit. Sorry. No, that's not right. I've now been in here for 16 years for a crime I didn't commit. Please, just try one more time, please. I know you've been trying. I know you're not getting anywhere, but please just try one more time. He was desperate. And to be fair, you can't blame the guy. Now, Conan Doyle could not ignore Slater's heartfelt request. He fired off a fresh barrage of letters. He wrote to his influential friends, the press, and to the Secretary of State of Scotland. He made public appearances and began to gather other like-minded people to the cause. The movement slowly began to gather steam, and the turning point was in 1927 when a book by Glasgow journalist William Park was published. So Conan Doyle thought, if I'm giving this one more last ditch effort to save this innocent man from a life imprisonment for a crime that he clearly didn't commit, I'm going to give it my all. I'm going to bring my A game and throw everything at it. And he did. He went in swinging. He took it as high as he could. He was screaming for the rooftops for anybody that would listen. Look, this is a huge miscarriage of justice. Something needs to be done. They are covering this up. And eventually, if you scream loud enough, people are gonna eventually stop and pay attention. And they did. To the point that yet another book was written about the case. That I really need to add to my library. And I've got so many books now for doing this that I need to get, and it's unreal. My Kindle's gonna be stuck through a... Well, I'm saying my Kindle, it's my book, audio book, Amazon Audio. Dear God, please delete that as well, actually. See, just along with my search history in my orange folder, get rid of my audiobook collection as well, please, because that's quite scary. In fact, maybe just better off just getting rid of all evidence that ever existed. It might be safer. Oh, ad break. Oh, I should have... I've not got the laptop open, I didn't realise. Right, so, Conan Doyle, he thought, if I'm trying this one more time, I'm going to give it my all. 1925, he started screaming and shouting and going to anybody that would listen. He was going to press, he was holding rallies, he was writing to the highest in the land. Whatever he could do to get attention to the Oscar Slater case. And eventually, if you say something loud enough for long enough, people are going to start noticing. And eventually they did. And there was a turning point in the case, 1927, when another book Thank you, Purple. By a Glasgow journalist this time, a William Park, another book about this case was released. So people are finally starting to listen. Now, the truth about Oscar Slater re-examined the case. Park, the journalist, came to the same conclusion that Conan Doyle did when he first heard about the case back in 1912, that Miss Gilchrist had known the murderer and had invited him into her home. Park speculated that Miss Gilchrist had argued with that person about a document that maybe she possessed, because her paperwork had been rifled through. During the argument, she was pushed and hit her head. Her assailant was then forced to make a decision. What would be worse? To have Marion Gilchrist recover from her wounds and charge him with assault? Or just simply kill her and be done with the matter? And he chose to kill her. Libel laws prevented Park from naming this person in the book. However, he believed that the murderer was the victim's nephew. Now, we know that Miss Gilchrist comes from money. Very affluent woman, very influential. or nephew most certainly would have the same influence, you would think, or at least garnish the same amount of protection, especially if there was paperwork involved that suddenly disappeared. Again, this is purely speculative. What if it was a will? What if this little old lady decided to write her nephew out the will? She was unmarried, didn't have any kids, all she had was a nephew. Kinda makes sense. The book, understandably, caused a huge uproar. Newspapers were all of a sudden full of information about the case. Now bear in mind, this is back when journalists had integrity and they reported the truth as they saw it, know what they were told to print by the highest bidder. Witnesses came forth to talk about the police coaching them into naming Slater as the man they'd seen around the building that fateful day. So people are starting to realise that Conan Doyle's been right all along. Slater wasn't in fact the guilty party. On November 8th, 1927, the Secretary of State for Scotland issued the following statement. Oscar Slater has now completed more than 18 and a half years of his life sentence. Now remember, back then, when you got life, you got life. Right? Not like today, where life means you're out in 5 years. And I have felt justified in deciding to authorise his release on licence as soon as suitable arrangements can be made. Within a few days, Oscar Slater was a free man. But there was still an issue with that. Yes, he was still a free man, but he was also still, in the eyes of the law at least, a convicted murderer. He was still guilty of killing Marion Gilchrist. So, yay, he's free. But no, because he's still a convicted murderer. Now, the case was not totally a happy ending as far as Conan Doyle was concerned. Slater was released, but he was not pardoned. As a result, the case had to be reopened and retried, as you would expect. Now, at that point, Slater could apply for compensation from the government for the years of wrongful imprisonment. Conan Doyle and others. No problem, Beardy. Thank you for joining us. Catch you later. Not a problem. Now, Conan Doyle and others gave money to Slater to pay for his legal fees. In the end, Slater was cleared of all charges. Big surprise. We saw that coming, right? And awarded £6,000 in compensation. Right. Just to clarify here. £6,000 back in 1927, given inflation, is roughly about £250,000 in today's money. Now, by all means, £6,000 back then, hell of a lot of money. Today, £250,000 for 18 and a half years of wrongful imprisonment, not so much. You'd be at least looking at 8 figures if this were to happen today. Conan Doyle assumed that Slater would reimburse his supporters for his legal fees. Pay them back for all the help that they've been. They paid for my lawyers, I'm going to give them the money back. After all, it was what Conan Doyle would have done. So, you paid for my lawyers, you got me out of jail, here's the money back that I owe you. However, Slater saw the matter in a different way, and he thought it was ridiculous that he had to pay court costs at all, and he shouldn't have to pay them back. Not a problem, Conch. I'll catch you later. Now, Conan Doyle didn't need the £1,000 that he'd given for Slater's legal fees. But what was important to Slater that Slater seemed ungrateful for the support that he'd been given. Honour was very important to Conan Doyle, and he believed that Slater had behaved in a dishonourable manner, which I agree with him. Conan Doyle wrote to Slater saying, "You seem to have taken leave of your senses. If you are indeed responsible for your actions, then you are the most ungrateful as well as the most foolish person whom I have ever known." Had Conan Doyle been alive in 1948, he would probably have disagreed with the newspaper notice about Oscar Slater's death. Oscar Slater, dead at 78, reprieved murderer, friend of A. Conan Doyle. He was no friend of Conan Doyle's. The man was a leech. He took and took until he was free, and then he got all the money and left. Didn't care about the folk that had helped him out. Just took his payday and was gone. So, yeah, Oscar Slater was eventually cleared of the murder of the little old 83-year-old spinster Marion Gilchrist, because he never done it. And anybody with an ounce of common sense could see that. The police, they just wanted to pin it on somebody, and they wanted to cover up for quite probably the nephew. Slater was the obvious choice because he just so happened to have pawned the brooch and left the country. But even though it was a totally different brooch to the one that he'd stolen, the one that was stolen, and even though he'd been planning the trip with his mistress for months, it didn't come into it. Even with all the evidence heavily in his favour, Slater still spent 18 and a half years in prison for a crime that he didn't commit. And the fallout for that miscarriage of justice was felt for a long time. Many people lost their jobs. And one man was even fired, set up and disgraced. Because anybody that wanted to discover the truth, yeah, he really shouldn't have bought a hammer. See, to be honest with you, see the way these police were covering this up, they'd probably have planted one, to be fair. Even though she wasn't even killed with a flaming hammer. But so many people fought for justice to be served and for Slater to become a free man because he was innocent of this. And indeed, Slater left prison a very wealthy man and completely forgot about all the people that helped get him out of prison in the first place. And on top of that, the real killer got away with it because the police covered it up. They knew his name. They were told it. But they never done anything about it. Yeah, hammer, bad. Yeah, never own a hammer, people. But they not only knew the killer's name, they actively covered it up and coached witnesses into lying, saying that it was in fact Oscar Slater. And it wasn't until 18 years later that they finally admitted the truth. But let's take it back and let's be real for a minute. Joseph Slater was not a good man. He was not a nice person. And he should have been in prison for several different crimes, including the 2 assaults that he was acquitted of, long before he was eventually jailed for the crime that he didn't commit. So, is it maybe poetic justice that he did spend 18 years in prison? This is a man that would beat people up and sell stolen items for fun. He run about with dodgy people, and if you fly with the crows you get shot with them, as the saying goes. He was not a nice man, okay? Now, he should definitely have went to prison, just not for that particular murder. But there is no doubt, and again this is my personal opinion, there is no doubt in my mind that one day he would have beaten someone to death because he was handy with his fists. So, if he had not been in prison for a murder he didn't commit, chances are he would have committed murder at one point. I believe he would have, because he was a violent man. So that's kind of ironic, right? Being in prison for murdering a little old lady that he didn't murder probably saved him from murdering someone. Now, to say that this story's got me conflicted would be an understatement. One hand, you've got a man that spent 18 and a half years in prison and was 2 days away from execution before his sentence was changed. He was in there for a crime he didn't commit. Right, kiddo? But And I mean, that's bad. I get that, right? He was in jail for a crime he didn't commit. That's bad. But on the other hand, this guy was a real piece of shit who should have been in prison anyway. Probably long before he actually was. And the way he acted after all these people lobbied to get him released. Yeah, I'm out. Fuck you, I'm off. Go suck an egg. And him being in prison probably saved someone's life. I mean, yeah, the little old lady died and that's a shame, but him being in prison for that. I mean, she was already dead, not by his hand, but she was already dead. There was no changing that. But him being in prison for that probably saved someone else from dying at his hand. So, yeah, I'm conflicted with this one. This one, yeah. But, so it's a conflicting story, this one, because it kind of, how do you feel about it? Yeah, he spent years in prison for a crime he didn't commit. That's bad. But he was a real sack of shit who probably would have ended up in prison for murder anyway. For actually killing someone. At least he never got the chance to do that. But honestly, guys, I would love to know what you think about this one, because it is a real thought provoker, this one. Yes, it is the biggest miscarriage of justice in Scottish history. Of that, there is no doubt. Did Oscar Slater murder Miss Marion Gilchrist? No, he most certainly did not. Should he have went to jail for killing Miss Marion Gilchrist? No, he most certainly should not. Because he didn't do it. Someone else did, and the police and the judicial system covered it up. And they covered it up well for the best part of 20 years. Before enough people made enough noise and it got overturned. And quite rightly so. But this is a real nasty person who had already been in court twice and acquitted for assault. And who would probably have ended up in prison for beating someone to death. So, I don't know. That's one got me thinking more than I would like. Because normally at the end of the stories, it's like, right, this is what's happened, this is how we feel about it. This one, not so much, and it's a weird one. But it is what it is. It happened almost 100 years ago, and there's really not a lot we can do about it. We'll never know for certain who killed and robbed Marion Gilchrist. Why do I keep saying Margaret? We'll never know for sure who killed and robbed Marion Gilchrist. But, yeah. There's no winners in this. Slater lost 18 and a half years of his life. Everybody lobbied to get him out. He finally got out and he went, screw the lawyers, thanks for money, I'm off. These people with thousands of pounds out of pocket, and instead of paying them back, he just, no, cheerio, thanks, I'm off. Have a nice life. Yeah, it sucks. But, yeah, it's a weird one. It really is. Right, so, let me know in the comments on YouTube later if you're watching this there what you think about this one, because it is a real, it's It's a weird one. But I will be back. Well, obviously I'll be back as normal on Tuesday with Little Nightmares. And then back on Thursday with Resident Evil 2. Let's see if I can get out this flaming police station. Obviously we have the podcast on Saturday over on Mr. Modman's channel. Let's see if I can do this. I really should have had my laptop open. Yeah, the nephew is the only winner on this one. Not a problem. Yeah. But I'll be back next Sunday with a very interesting story that I have mentioned before. Again, it came up in the Dr. Glacier story. That involves a 70-piece human jigsaw puzzle. That one you don't want to miss. Because I'm intrigued. But, as always, thank you for joining me. Stay safe, look after each other, and I will catch you all next time. Bye bye now.